Hello guys, it's me Karthik. Hope you guys are doing really good. So in this tutorial we are going to talk about Spring Batch with an example. What is that example? We are going to consume the large CSV file and save them into our database. Okay, so what is Spring Batch? So basically what is meant by batch? Batch processing, we'll use this keyword lot of times, right? So batch processing is nothing but large chunks of data you wanted to process. You wanted to schedule and process. That is nothing but batch processing, right? And Spring Boot itself is providing the inbuilt functionality for such use cases. That is nothing but the batch processing. This is an architecture. If you can understand architecture very well, then you can code it very easily. This we are going to discuss in detail. First, let's start our project from here. If you see here, I have taken some Maven project. Let's keep all of them like this, and let's add the dependencies. One of them is web dependency, because obviously from endpoint I want to hit, and data JPA, so that I can communicate with my database effectively. And coming to the batch, you could see here Spring itself is providing the batch. That means it's a Spring starter batch. Okay, and also I'm going to use Lombok. And also, since I'm connecting to database, what database I need to use? I need to use, in my case I'm using MariaDB. I hope you guys are using some relational database. Okay, so the same thing I have exported here. Let me show you that here. Okay, so you could see first is Spring starter batch, then Spring data JPA, then correspondingly MariaDB, then web and the Lombok dependencies. Others are the tests which you will directly get them. Okay, since I am using database here, I need to connect to the database, right? So for that purpose, what I did is I have taken, now you could see here, this data source things. You don't have to worry about anything here, guys. I want you guys to understand the concept, because anyway I'm going to upload this into the Git, so that you guys can go and practice this. So coming to database, the standard properties like data source URL, username, password, driver class name, dialect, all those things we are using. Okay, and here this is our CSV file. Okay, so you could see here it's a large CSV file. Okay, and this CSV file we are going to dump into the database, right? So that means I need to have a table created for this, right? That means I need to have an entity in our JPA terms if we talk. Okay, so I have created an entity here, so that we can get started very quickly with the same field names as defined here: first name, last name, email, gender, all those things I have defined. Okay, so with this we can get started very quickly. Okay, now let's go back to the architecture. So here, as part of this, let me add one more. Okay, let me copy and paste it here. Okay, that's okay, not a big deal. First let's start from here. Okay, so here there will be a you know uh, something called job launcher. Job launcher will going to launch the job, and each job can have multiple steps. Okay, as you can see here, each job can have multiple steps, and also each step is going to have three steps again. What are them? Like item reader, processor, and writer. Okay, in our case we are going to read from CSV file and dump into database, right? So in our case, item reader is nothing but reading from the CSV file, like what are the prerequisites, pointing to where my file is and how the file is located, how the delimited is and how I can point that data to the bean object. Okay, that is taken care by item reader, right? Then coming to the item processor is once I have the data into the bean, do I wanted to process some business scenarios like you wanted to, let me show you that here. See, this is the CSV file, right? So I have this country and I wanted to, get the details of Ukraine only, and other I wanted to eliminate some first name with the specified first name. So some filter conditions you can apply in our item processor. And coming to the item writer is nothing but where you're, what you're going to do, where you're going to save. In our case, it is going to be a table, right? So we need to have the table. That means in our case is a repository, and we need to tell to the JPA like what method I'm going to, use. So all these steps combines a step, and this step we need to give it back to the job so that a job launcher going to launch this step. Okay, so if you can understand this and if you can map your code according to this diagram, Spring Batch is very easy. So let's get started directly. I wanted to show you two properties before we start implementing. First one is JDBC initialize schema. Basically, Spring Batch will going to create certain tables. Let me show you that here. Batch. Now you could see these are the tables it is creating. Something like this. If I show you, like how many are executed, and what is the status and execution context, and what are the parameters we are passing to execute. Other details are will be stored here. This table we don't need as of now, so let me drop it so that we are going to dump the data. Okay, cool. Now one more field is batch job enabled false, so that when application starts I don't want JPA to kickstart. I wanted to start it via API. That's what I'm going to show here. Cool. Now let's go to the config package. There were a couple of packages I have created. First one is config, controller, entity, repo. Okay, controller is where you are going to keep the controller. Entity is where you have the table, and repo is the corresponding tables repository. I am using JPA repository here. Right, now let's go here and create a class called batch config. Let's keep this as configuration, so that configuration. And also one more point is I'm going to use Spring Boot 3 in our case. Okay, and let me keep rlux constructor, which is coming from Lombok, so that I can have the constructor injection. Okay, now if you go to the diagram, first let's build the item reader. Okay, in this manner we'll go. First build the item reader, processor, writer, then the step job, likewise. Okay, so let's build the item reader. Okay, so this is going to be the CSV file, right? CSV files are, all these files are also called as flat files. So I'm going to use flat file item reader. Okay, of what type? Of customer type. Customer is nothing but the entity we have created. Okay, so I have kept it there. Now where is that batch config? Here, right? Okay, this is my item reader. Okay, now let's create that object of flat file item reader. Okay, so item reader is equal to new flat file item reader. Okay, now item reader dot. Now you could see from here itself, reader means what? It is going to set up all the items related to reading the file, right? So first one should be like where the file is presented, right? So for that I have a method called set resource. Okay, so new file system resource. Okay, and where our CSV file is presented, our CSV file, I kept it in the resources folder. Okay, so source main and resources customer.csv. Okay, so source src main resources, then customers.csv. This is where my CSV file is presented. Now item reader dot, I can set the name for this. Let's say like CSV hyphen reader. Okay, then item reader dot. Now you could see lines to skip. Why we are doing this? Why we need to skip the lines is simple. Basically, because first one is going to be a header, right? That's why I'm going to skip this. Okay, so I'll going to skip this first one. Then item reader dot, there is something called line mapper that we will discuss in a bit. Okay, so let me take that something like this, so that I'm going to create this method. Okay, now let's return this item reader directly. Okay, so this is done. Now coming back to the line mapper. Okay, so I have this CSV file. Now I need to tell my Java application like what are the column names and how those are separated by. In my case, these are separated by comma and these are the column names, so that I can assign this data to my bin. This is my bin. Okay, that is going to be handled in this case in line mapper. Okay, now we are in the line mapper, right? So now let me take something called default line mapper. Okay, so default line mapper, this of customer type, let's say like line mapper is equal to new default line mapper. Okay, now you could see here line mapper dot, here there were two things it is asking, field set mapper and set line tokenizer, right? Before getting into that, let's build the tokenizer. Okay, so tokenizer, you could see here we have a delimited line tokenizer. Let me take that is equal to new delimited line tokenizer, right? So what is mean by this? Like you wanted to specify this comma, and this field names as well. Okay, so let me copy this and I'm going to use it here. Okay, so tokenizer dot, now you could see here what is a delimiter. Delimiter is my comma and tokenizer dot set names. What are the names? These are the names are there. Okay, there is a method called set strict. Are you going to be very strict on it? No, I don't want it to be very strict. This is one. Okay, now we have this line mapper, right? Now let's set our line tokenizer, that is nothing but tokenizer. Okay, cool. Now there is a one more method we need to create, like set. Now you could see field set, sorry, this field set mapper, right? This method I need to create. Okay, so field set field set mapper, okay, of customer type mapper is equal to new. Yeah, cool, understood. Now we have this one, okay, we can create this bean wrapper field set mapper instead of that, okay. So basically what it is saying is I have these fields. Now I wanted to convert these fields I got it right. Now I need to convert that, I need to assign that to my class. This is nothing but customer dot class, okay. Now I have the field set mapper, right? This I have can keep it here. Now finally I can simply return my mapper object, right? This is my line mapper, sorry, I can return my line mapper. So what we did here is simple. We have mentioned like the CSV file is going to be separated by comma, and these are the fields, and once those are separated I wanted you to assign it to the target class, okay. This is completely related to item reader. Now let's go to the item processor. So for that purpose let me create a processor here. Let me take customer processor, which is going to implement item processor. Now you could see item processor is coming from Spring Batch, right? And we need to define inbound and outbound, okay. Customer comma customer. Now it is asking us to implement a one method, okay, called process. Here item processor is nothing but how do you going to map your input to the required output, okay. In my case, are we doing any filter conditions? No, we are simply dumping the data available and keeping into the table, right? So I am not going to do any sort of processing here. If you want, you can keep it here, something like item dot get, let's say like I wanted to take only the females, okay. Then you can simply use equals ignore case and use female and put that into the if condition. If that is the case, then return that item, return item. Likewise also you can do, okay, not a big deal. But as of now we are not going to do that. Let's, whatever the input we are getting here, we are going to process that. One thing we need to remember is for each single line, for each single line, okay, each single line, this processor method is going to be executed. You need to remember that one thing, okay. Let me unpin, close all the tabs, okay. Now customer processor batch config and customer CSV, okay. So for each line this method is going to be executed, okay. Now let's create that bean here, bean, which is public void, not void, customer processor, let's say processor, okay. And it is going to return new customer processor, right? Cool. Here, okay. Now what we can do here, let's take all args constructor, no args constructor, and data let's take all of them and keep it here, and let's define this as a configuration. No need, anyhow I am going to use it here, right? Not needed. I think this should be sufficient. Okay, now let's take the item writer. In our case, we are going to save that into the database. So first let's use that JPA repository. Okay, so private final customer repo, this is my repo. So let's say like customer repo. Okay, now let me take that bean object here. Okay, now public, this is a JPA, right? So JPA repository item writer. Okay, let's use that. Okay, customer, let me take it as item writer method. Let me keep this as public and take the bean object. Okay, now here let me create a object of this. Let's say like writer is equal to new writer. Now writer dot, now you could see we need to define the repository. Repository is nothing but the one we have imported just now, customer repo. This is the one. Then what method we are going to use is inside that repo we have the save method, right? So that I am pointing here. Now once we have this, let's return that writer back. Okay, so until now we have implemented reader, processor and item writer. Now it's a time to implement the step, right? So let me take that bean here. Okay, public step, let's say like step, let me take it something like CSV step, anything is fine, keep it step, that should be okay. Let's import this. Now here return new, here we have something called step, uh, we have something called step builder basically. Okay, so return new, yeah, this object step builder. Now let's define some name to this, something called CSV step. Okay, now this is going to ask for JP, the job repository. So let me take job repository here, job repository. Okay, now we need to pass on this job repository. Once we have this, now we need to tell like how many chunks of data you wanted to read at a time. Okay, so using chunk method 10, I'm saying. Now you could see it is asking for platform transaction manager, right? So let me define that here in platform transaction manager. Let's say like transaction manager, keep it here like transaction manager. Okay, cool, not a big deal. Now here each step can have reader, processor, writer, right? So all of them I need to assign it here. So I have the reader here, which is item reader. So let me keep it here, item reader. Then we have the processor. So where is that? This is a processor. Let me keep it here. Then writer is this one, item writer. Okay, now we need to simply build this. Here it is saying like one issue, I am expecting a item processor, but you are giving me the customer processor, right? So let me do one thing here. Let me define customer of customer. So I am saying let's use the customer type here and read 10 chunks of data each time. Okay, so this is how I built my step object. Now once my step is completed, it's time to assign that step back to the job, right? So let me take another bean here called public uh, job job object. Now let's return new job builder. Okay, now let me keep name as like CSV job, and I need to pass on my job repository here. Job repository, let's say like job repository. So let me pass here job repository. Then like now the steps we are going to assign with the help of flow. What is the step? The step we have defined above, and that will have repository this step. So we need to call this step. This step needed two parameters. First one is job repository, second one is platform transaction manager. So let me pass on that here as a transaction manager. Right now I simply need to end this and build it. This is my job repository. Okay, this is my job. Right now I have a job launcher to run this job with the help of run method. This job launcher I am going to use as part of my controller. So in order to save time, I have already created a controller here with a get mapping start batch. Okay, now what I need to do, I need to take private job launcher is nothing but job launcher. This job launcher going to launch the job, right? So let me take the job as well. Okay, now with the help of run method, it is going to launch the job. Now you could see I have the job, but do I have the job parameters? No, right? So what is mean by job parameters here? We are passing some parameters to the job so that it will have all the information, right? So let me take that first job parameters, like job parameters is equal to new job parameters builder. Okay, dot here add, let me add long here like start it, then system dot current time in milliseconds. Okay, this I'm going to add it to the two job parameters. Okay, once we have this job parameters, simply use job launcher to launch our job with the help of run method. This is going to ask you to handle certain exceptions. Let me simply add them. These are related to jobs. Okay, now this, let me introduce a local variable here, job execution, right? Okay, this is returning me the job execution, right? Now if I do this, I have a get status. Okay, that is nothing but batch status. So let me return that directly so that I will understand whether my job is successfully launched, successfully completed or not. Okay, these are the steps, guys. I am compiling this application now. I wanted to explain one more time. First, go to the top right. First, see how you can build each object like item reader, writer. One second. In the meantime, let me start the postman as well. Okay. So, okay. Customer process already defined in the okay constructor already defined. Okay. Some issues we are going to face. So let's resolve them. So what we are doing is first we are building the top right related to item reader processor writer. Okay. So let me explain you that. So go to the batch config. Here this is nothing but my item reader. So what I am doing initially, I am going to dump my CSV file to the database. That means where is my CSV file? Here is my CSV file. And how the file should be, like first one is header, I need to remove that. Then how the CSV file is, like is it comma separated, then remove that comma. And how do my Spring Boot application will understand each field. So let's set that fields here directly. Okay, done. Once the fields are set, now the data will be read. Assign that to your bean. Okay, that is completed. Then in processor, what is it going to do? It's going to process one row at a time. And we have the item writer to save the data as well, right? Now you could see our application is started. Now simply click on send. Now you could see how fast it is going to execute each and every single thing, right? Still executing because it is by nature it is a synchronous job. Now you could see if I simply refresh this and let's say like customer or else let's say like batch customer info batch. Now you could see we got all the data, right? But you could see here it is got in a sequential manner. That's why it took little more time, but it got completed. Okay, because one item at a time, like 10 chunks of data it took. Is there any way to make it asynchronous? Definitely yes. Definitely yes. Here in the steps there is a method called task executor. Okay, let me take that task executor so that it will create me a new method here. Okay, task executor. Okay, so simple, there is a method called simple asynchronous task executor. Let me take as a async task executor is equal to new simple async task executor, right? So here what I am doing is I am setting the concurrency limit. That means how many threads should be executed at a given point of time. I am setting the 10 threads here and I am returning this async task executor. So what will happen? Each thread will take 10 chunks of data and process. That means they will be for each time they will be first let me rerun this. Okay, so each time there will be 10 chunks and each so 10 threads, each one will going to have 10 records, so that 100 records going to be processed in a given point of time. Okay, you can increase the chunk limit as well, but this is the way we are defining Spring Batch to execute in a asynchronous manner. Okay, to execute in a asynchronous manner we are defining here. This is a very powerful mechanism, guys, and you don't need to worry about any single thing here because I'm going to put that entire code in a description. Okay, let me just clear the data for you. Empty the table. Now it is started. Click on send. Now you could see it is getting executed, right? Okay, it is getting executed. Now you could see it completed in 7 seconds. Previous to that it completed in 11 seconds. Now it is in under 7 seconds. This is a very good performance improvement. Okay, now if you go to the tables, each table like this job execution, just now we ran, so the timestamp also been updated here and the corresponding statuses, and we have the params. Like for each job we have set some parameters, right? So in our case it is in controller. Here we set some params, right? So those params are available here. Okay, params table and job instances, whatever the name that we are giving to the job. That's why we have given the names here. If you observe properly, there is something called job, we have defined the name, and there is something called step as well, we have defined the name, right? So job names will be here, step names will be here, and the execution as well, how many records were there, whether those were completed or not, if failed, what is the error message. This is very very important. Okay, that's why you could see here we got the entire error message in case if it is failed, so that I can easily track it, that issue. Okay, so this is a small demo on Spring Batch, guys. Hope it's useful for you guys.